They tried to shut them up.
There's no guarantee to free speech.
They tried to cancel them.
Deplatforming works.
They even threw them in jail.
Peter Navarro,
Steve Bannon,
now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
It's not a prison bill that will ever shut me up.
They call them rebels.
Basket of deplorables.
They call them rogues.
They claim to guns or religion.
And they say they're outlaws.
These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
War Room presents Rebels, Rogues, and Outlaws.
You set out to take Vienna. Take Vienna!
The national bestseller by longtime Bannon producer Dan Fluette. Take a journey through the pictorial history of War Room. In a culture that celebrates the weak, show your support by standing with the rebels. Go to doitfluette.com or scan the QR code on your screen. Use the code RAV20 for 20% off your order. Stand with the rebels and never back down.
Happens when the fourth turning meets fifth generation warfare.
A commentator, international social media sensation, and former Navy intelligence veteran.
This is Human Events with your host, Jack Posobiec.
Christ is king.
Deadly ambush in Idaho. At least 2 firefighters were killed after responding to a brush fire.
Firefighters arrived near a routine local trailhead for what they thought was a routine wildfire. Instead, they began taking gunfire. 2 were killed, a 3rd wounded. A massive force of heavily armed law enforcement arriving.
Trump is threatening to withhold money from New York City if Zohran Mamdani is elected mayor and pushes back on federal policies.
I mean, he's a communist and going to be mayor of New York. If he does get in, I'm going to be president, and he's going to have to do the right thing, or they're not getting any money.
The U.S. and China announcing a trade agreement over discussions done in Geneva.
We're doing a rare earth deal. We have a big trade deficit with China. Biden let it get up to $1 trillion. Think of it, $1 trillion deficit with one country.
Calendar number 107, H.R. 1, an act to provide for reconciliation pursuant to Title II of H.Con. Res. 14.
The yeas are 51, the nays are 49. The motion is agreed to.
Senators plan to vote on amendments to President Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill at the U.S. Capitol. Their marathon debate on the bill ended early this morning. Democrats delayed debate for 16 hours over the weekend by forcing the clerk to read the 940-page plan aloud on the floor.
All right, Jack Posobiec, here we are back live, Human Events Daily, Washington, D.C. Today is June 30th, 2025. Anno Domini, want to bring in immediately here Senator Ron Johnson from the great state of Wisconsin. Senator Johnson has been in the thick of it in these deliberations and debates regarding the big, beautiful bill. Senator Johnson, I'd love an update, if you could, for our audience. Where do things stand from your perch right now?
Well, Jack, first of all, I'd like to just clarify some things because we get all wrapped up in scores and increase in deficit. The main deficit driver in this bill is the fact that we don't want to increase anybody's taxes. So that's about $4 trillion. So again, that was, I would say, a mistake we made in 2017 where we didn't reduce spending to make the Tax Cut and Jobs Act permanent. So we're kind of paying the price for that now. But again, no Republican wants to increase taxes, particularly not President Trump. So that's a big part of this bill. It's one of the reasons it has to pass. But the truth is that the House, they've cut spending by about $1.4 trillion net. Increased spending for the border because the Democrats opened it up, created that mess. Increased spending on defense because of all the wars. We've got to clean up that mess. And of course, the big problem is 7 years prior to the pandemic, we averaged deficits of about $660 billion, way too high. Then we have the pandemic, but Democrats, rather than being responsible and returning to even those levels, they averaged deficits of $1.9 trillion over the last 4 years. So that's the deficit mess we're trying to fix here. The House reduces spending on net basis about $1.4 trillion, the Senate about $1.6. We make more of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act permanent, so that's a higher score. And right now, I think that the big bone of contention between the Senate and the House is we're missing their evaluation, their score of this bill by about $650 billion. from my standpoint, that's not a problem. We've got a solution. Rick Scott would simply, right now it's somewhere like 2029 or 2030 or 2031, would simply stop allowing states to enroll single able-bodied working-age childless adults in Obamacare expansion. They call it Medicaid expansion, but it's really Obamacare, where the federal government kicks in $9 for every dollar the state kicks into that Medicaid expansion. For a disabled child, for every dollar the state kicks in, the federal government puts in about $133. So we're trying to end that disparity, because that incentive for states to sign up single childless adults, that has caused all kinds of distortions, hundreds of billions of dollars flowing out of the federal government that we don't have. States and providers are basing their budgets on that largesse, on that legal money laundering. So Rick Scott's got a great idea. Just stop enrollment. Someday in the future, nobody would lose coverage. If states want to keep signing up single childless adults, they can do it under regular Medicaid and get reimbursed the same level that a disabled child will get reimbursed. But so all the lies are from the left.
We've got a quick break here.
What America First truly means.
Welcome to the second American Revolution.
All right, Jack Posobiec here, Human Events Daily. We are back, and we're still live with Senator Johnson. Senator, right before the last break, you got cut off a little bit. I wanted you to finish that, because you're talking about how, when they're talking about what you're driving at here, this isn't the wider program of Medicaid. What you're talking about is an Obamacare expansion of that, which is called the Medicaid expansion.
Right. And it is actually threatening Medicaid for disabled children. I mean, think about it. We pay $9 for every $1 the state spends for a single childless adult that should be working or could be working. And we pay $1.33 for a disabled child. We actually pay double and triple procedures that they pay for in Medicare on Medicaid now, because the Biden administration said, oh, you can pay commercial rates. Again, it's a scam. It's a money laundering scam. Again, it was all about Obamacare trying to convert us to a single payer system. Did a pretty good job, because we signed up tens of millions more single childless adults that, again, by and large, should be getting insurance through their employer because they should be working.
And so this is an ability then to actually try to rectify and rebalance those sheets. Does that make sense?
Exactly. And of course, the Democrats say we want to take Medicaid away from the disabled children. Nothing could be further from the truth. We're trying to save that. There's a great article in the Wall Street Journal, for example. A father of a 17-year-old severely autistic child, God bless them, they're taking care of this child at home. They would like home health care, but they're on a 10-year waiting list because providers would much rather provide that to a single childless adult, because get reimbursed $9 to one, the state does, and those providers can probably charge higher than they get for Medicare, for example. So again, it's a crazy system. We have to fix that. We have to end that, because we can't afford the hundreds of billions of dollars that are being scammed out of the federal government by the states and by those providers.
Now, is this something that would come? Is this in the text of the bill, or would this be a separate amendment?
Well, unfortunately, it wasn't, because, again, a lot of my colleagues are pretty afraid of the Democrat lies and the way the media carries those lies. And so it was difficult to get that in and still get onto the bill. And quite honestly, that's one of the reasons we had the delay on Saturday. Senator Scott, myself, Mike Lee, Cynthia Lummis, we wanted it in the base text. They wouldn't put it in there, but in the end, they offered us an amendment with leadership pushing to get this passed. And now that we've got the House, I think, are announcing that we're $650 billion shy of their mark. I don't think this won't pass in the House. That's kind of what they're telling us. So let's fix it all. Pass Rick's amendment. There's also some extraneous extra tax credits, some goodies for members. I don't think when we're $37 trillion in debt, we ought to have those goodies either. So we ought to be able to come up, honestly, with $650 billion savings pretty easily, even today, but it'll take presidential leadership. It'll take Republican leadership in the Senate to bring along some reluctant Senate colleagues.
How has the president, and we also know the vice president was there on Saturday, how have they and the White House been involved in the process here?
Well, I spent 2 hours with the president on Saturday, and that was time well spent. It certainly convinced me that he is absolutely committed to returning to a reasonable pre-pandemic level of spending. Russ Vought was there. Those guys also, and I will be highly involved in a process to achieve and maintain that level. So again, my meetings with him over the last few weeks convinced me he wants to do this. We both realize this is really hard. Again, the Democrats left us these enormous messes. It's easy to be a Democrat, spend money, mortgage your kids' future, never be held accountable by the media. But when Republicans want to dial that back, we get accused of stealing money from women and children. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Well, that's something of a business strategy when it comes to Democrats and the media. Now, that being said, where do you see the bill as it stands now? Are there other amendments that you see that are creating the same level of either getting traction or getting lost on the wayside?
Well, you have to understand, most of this vote-a-ram is just a charade. None of these amendments really have a chance to pass. Rick Scott's is a crucial amendment. I think it has to pass. It'll make it a lot easier to pass here in the Senate. It'll make it a whole lot easier to pass in the House. So again, we need the president to get behind this. We need Senate leadership, and the couple or few Republicans that are reluctant to vote for Rick's amendment, they got to be brought on board by the president. And then again, I think this sails through the House as well. Then the big one, big beautiful bill. That's something we can all celebrate, because we literally would repeal the most damaging part of Obamacare, the way it's distorting and really threatening Medicaid for those disabled children and other vulnerable individuals. So that'd be a big win. It saves a lot of money. And again, nobody would lose coverage. It doesn't take effect till a few years out. The sooner we bring up to effect, the more money we can save. But that'll be a decision for the conference to make. But again, we just have to pass Rick Scott's amendment.
Now, looking a little bit down the line, obviously the president has set Friday as the big deadline for that. Do you think that's within reach?
Listen, I think we can come to agreement pretty quick, as long as, again, if the president would get engaged, start twisting a few reluctant arms right now, I think this seals the deal in the Senate and even in the House. So I think that's crucial. Then I think we could maybe meet that time frame. If not, this may drag. But again, we're all dedicated to making sure that we don't have a massive automatic tax increase, avoid a default, provide the funding for the border, provide funding for our war fighters, because it's a dangerous world, made more dangerous by 4 years of Democrat governance. So again, the vast majority of this bill we're in agreement with. We're arguing over the details. There's no doubt about that. And that's okay. It's a messy process, but we're all on the same page. We all respect each other. We all want to support the president's agenda.
Well, I appreciate that, because I think a lot of people are used to some of these nasty debates, maybe more on the House side. Gets a little nasty than the Senate side. But when it comes down to that, then what level of traction are you seeing the amendment getting in the Senate? Are there any others that seem to be coming on board?
Well, again, I think we were offered a vote on Rick's amendment pretty early on, but we needed leadership fully committed to supporting it. That took a little bit of time. So again, I went down the floor of the Senate. I voted no on motion to proceed, because we had no we had no guarantee. We had nothing. And, Rick and Cynthia and Mike Lee, they withheld their vote. The negotiation began, and now we are where we are. So, yeah, it's a little messy. I think maybe some of our actions are misinterpreted. My goal here, President Trump said he wanted the Senate to make the bill better. I think we have in many respects. I want to make it much better. I think Rick's amendment would make this much better. I think it would not only sail here through the Senate, it would sail through the House. So I really do encourage the president, get on board, start making some calls, twist some arms. I think our leadership's doing everything they can to round up the votes. But it's a tough process. It doesn't happen, within minutes or sometimes hours. Maybe it take a day or two. I hope it doesn't.
No, absolutely. Now, in the midst of this, you mentioned working with the White House, you mentioned leadership. Have you had any discussions with the House side as well, with Speaker Johnson or any of his team?
Well, the Speaker came over to the Senate a couple of days ago, urged passage. We are talking to the House conservatives all the time. Rick Scott's done a fabulous job. Every week we meet at his townhouse, have a makeshift dinner. And we've been talking to House conservatives really since the start of the last Congress. It's one of the reasons we got by the last debt ceiling. It was House conservatives that offered an increase to debt ceiling with spending reductions. Unfortunately, Kevin McCarthy took that and then just suspended the debt ceiling. And basically dropped it in President Trump's lap, which he was not happy with.
Last question on that. Since it is HHS, any discussions with Secretary Kennedy?
We are both of us trying to get HHS to be transparent. It's a tough slog. I mean, we have deep staters. They know how to frustrate Secretary Kennedy's intention to be radically transparent. And that's going to be true throughout the agencies. We've only got so many people appointed by President Trump, the political appointees in these agencies, and they're being blunted across the board. So this is, President Trump had to, I think, terminate more than a couple hundred lawyers in the Department of Justice. They're hard to replace. I mean, the left with their lawfare, what they're doing, for example, Judge Troopas in Wisconsin, just represented President Trump during the election. They are trying to destroy him. $1 million worth of legal fees, lawfares, trying to literally charge do it every time for things that they said was perfectly legal. So the left is just nasty. They are vicious.
Senator, we've got to run, but Godspeed to you and Godspeed on the bill. Happy 4th of July, by the way. Be right back. New Events.
Terrence Bates here with your Real America's Voice News Break. Thanks so much for being here with us. A Senate vote on President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill is expected to happen at some point in time today or early tomorrow. This following a marathon week of debate on the measure. Senate Republicans find themselves not only debating Democrats in the chamber, but also pushing back against the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which says the Senate's version of the Big Beautiful Bill will add an estimated $3.3 trillion to the national debt over a decade. The CBO's score is about $800 billion more than the bill the House sent to the Senate. President Trump also out with a message to Senate Republicans who may be considering a no vote because of the bill's price tag. Taking to True Social 47 writing, for all cost-cutting Republicans, of which I am one, remember, you still have to get reelected. Don't go too crazy. We'll make it all up 10 times with growth more than ever before. Meantime, while President Trump waits for the One Big Beautiful Bill to make it to his desk, the White House is taking a bit of a victory lap.
We are truly coming off a historic week of President Trump racking up win after win on behalf of the American people. President Trump restored peace through strength and acted decisively as commander-in-chief to obliterate the immediate threat of the Iranian regime's nuclear capabilities and then brokered a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, which continues to hold. Then, the president traveled to the Netherlands and achieved a monumental win for the United States and the NATO alliance by getting our allies to dedicate 5% of their GDPs to military spending. As a result of President Trump unleashing American energy dominance, summer gas prices are at the lowest they have been in 4 years, heading into the July 4th week.
And there is no rest for the weary as President Trump will head to Florida tomorrow for the opening of what is being called Alligator Alcatraz. We'll have that story coming up on our next news break. That's a quick check of your current news break. We'll see you soon.
Today, they talk about influencers. These are influencers, and they're friends of mine. Jack Posobiec. Where's Jack? Jack, he's done a great job.
All right, Jack Posobiec, we are back live, action-packed show today. We now are joined on Human Events Daily by Attorney General Ken Paxton of the great state of Texas. Mr. Attorney General, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's a great week.
Well, and congratulations on Texas's big win up at the Supreme Court regarding this issue. We had Terry Schilling on from the American Principles Project on Friday about this. But walk us through this new decision regarding pornography websites, and not just for Texas, but the whole country.
Yeah, I mean, really, our entire history, we've protected children from going into the military, drinking under a certain age, drugs, contracts, getting married. This is really no different. The Free Speech Coalition, which was put together by the porn companies, I guess that's a better name for them than porn companies, argued that we had gone too far protecting children that were 18 or younger. And certainly I'd understand their argument if these were adults, but we have a long history in Texas of protecting children, and I believe, and I think it's our history, that states have every right to protect children from things they would view as dangerous to children.
Well, and not only that, but there's certainly any number of websites and businesses out there where under 18 are already either restricted or face some type of regulation to be able to use the services. It's just, for some reason, this one, above all others, has been the one that was exempted.
Well, it's interesting. They actually, the Free Speech Coalition actually did not disagree that we had the right, that a state had a right to regulate it. So that even they, given our history and the precedent, had a hard time arguing that we were wrong in regulating. They just made the argument that we can't do it the way we're doing it. And then they offered up solutions that don't work and that have been tried in the past. So that way they could have their cake and eat it too. They could make an argument that didn't sound crazy, but at the same time, if they were successful, they'd still get to do what they wanted to do and still make the money off of what they're making the money off of.
And so what this really comes down to is that it seems that a lot of them probably tacitly knew, they have the ability to check who's on their website. They probably knew that they were making money from under 18.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. They wouldn't have been fighting this in such a kind of clever way of, changing their name to Free Speech Coalition and, agreeing with our arguments that there could be a regulation. But yet they fought hard. They took us all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And there was a reason they did that. And I think it's the bottom line. They make a lot of money doing this.
And a resounding victory, by the way, 6-3. This idea that I read some of the dissent in this, and quite honestly, I don't know if you had a chance to read any of them, but some of them just seemed a little bit silly in some of the things that they were saying. There's tons of precedent historically for states to regulate this, and many other businesses, industries, especially when it comes to children. And I saw some of the justices trying to argue that there wasn't any precedent behind that. It just seemed ridiculous to me.
I was at the court argument. I honestly thought we had a good chance of winning 9-0 because the history's there, and it's shocking to me that the three little judges were open to knocking down states' laws protecting children. It just seemed kind of extreme on their part, given the fact that there's plenty of precedent. And two, why shouldn't the legislature be able, on public policy grounds that they have passed because they were elected to do so, protect children? There's just so many examples of it. Why now is the Supreme Court saying that's unconstitutional? At least the dissent.
Exactly. And the truth is that pornography in America, it's just run amok with the internet. And so taking the fight to push back on this, whether it's you, A.G. Paxton, coming up to the Supreme Court all the way from Texas for age verification. First Lady, of course, was championing this bill, which is passed now into law regarding revenge porn. We're taking steps, it feels like, but the fight has really only just begun.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is a big first step. I'm sure they'll try to find ways around it. But ultimately, this is a free country. We have First Amendment rights. But as it relates to children whose brains are not fully developed and who can be impressionable and take things in they shouldn't take, parents should have that control. And there should be no reason why states cannot protect children. It's just, it's common sense.
Absolute common sense. Mr. Attorney General, I understand you have to run. We are just about out of time in the segment. Thank you so much for joining us yet again, and congratulations. Incredible victory.
Hey, thank you. It was a great victory, not for just for Texas, but for the country, and thanks for having me on. Have a great week.
Amen. God bless. Folks, there you have it. An incredible victory. Pornography is a menace. Pornography is something that absolutely should not be available for children in any way, shape, or form. We'll be right back. Human Events Daily.
Welcome back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. A new temporary migrant detention center is set to open in the Florida Everglades tomorrow. President Trump will be on hand for that event as Florida's new compound of heavy-duty tents, trailers, and temporary buildings will turn a Miami-Dade County-owned airfield in the Big Cypress National Preserve into a holding site for people in this country illegally who are in the deportation process. Florida State Attorney General says the site is perfect to hold illegal immigrants because, quote, if people get out, there's not much waiting for them other than alligators and pythons. And about 30 minutes ago, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt jumping on that bandwagon.
The facility is in the heart of the Everglades and will be informally known as Alligator Alcatraz. There is only one road leading in, and the only way out is a one-way flight. It is isolated and surrounded by dangerous wildlife and unforgiving terrain. The facility will have up to 5,000 beds to house, process, and deport criminal illegal aliens.
Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem will also be on hand for the opening of the facility. Since President Trump took office, at least 17,000 people have reportedly been placed in federal immigration detention. As President Trump continues to secure the nation's borders, he's counting on Congress to pass his one big beautiful bill in order to fund his policies. A Senate vote on the spending plan is expected to happen late tonight or maybe even early tomorrow following a marathon weekend of debate. Senate Republicans find themselves not only debating Democrats in the chamber, though, but also pushing back against the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which says the Senate's version of the big beautiful bill will add an estimated $3.3 trillion to the national debt over a decade. The CBO's score is about $800 billion more than the bill the House sent to the Senate. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'm Terrence Bates. Now let's get you back to Human Events Daily with Jack Posobiec.
And Jack, where's Jack? Where's Jack? Where is he? Jack, I want to see you. Great job, Jack. Thank you. What a job you do. You know, we have an incredible thing. We're always talking about the fake news and the bad, but we have guys, and these are the guys who be getting Pulitzers.
All right, folks, Jack Posobiec here, live, Human Events Daily. And folks, today we're going to take a second and tell you a little bit about home title lock, because in this segment, we've got another. It's happened again, folks. I've been warning about this. I've been telling you about this. It's happened again. So here's how it works. Use my promo code. That's promo code POSO, as you know, at HomeTitleLock.com, and you will get a free title history report and also a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. This is one of the hottest things that we talk about here on the program. We have a variety of partners that we work with, but this is the one where people are always telling me I got to get in on this. Plus, you know, it's free to get started. So 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud does occur, they will spend up to $1 million to fix it. So it's huge. It's very important. And I wanted to bring on now our frequent guest from Home Title Lock, Natalie Dominguez, to walk us through not only the situation, but also something that's just happened down, let me check this out, Broward County, because I just saw this story. It happened just this month here. Man is now facing felony charges after trying to scam the deed of a home from a widow with 4 children. absolutely insane. Natalie, walk us through what happened here.
Hi, Jack. Hi, everyone. So, part of my job, my main job, is to keep an eye on these news stories and stay, abreast of what's going on. So this is a really, really sad case because just like what happens with the elderly, people are constantly trying to scam those who are grieving, those who are not looking and not paying attention. The last thing that this new widow with her 4 children had to worry about was, watching the deed to their home, thinking some person's going to come in and try to steal it from them to do with it what they want, right? So in Broward County, what happened is this man filed this fraudulent deed and then nothing happened for months. So keep in mind, whenever you guys go and file any of these paperwork, or scammers are filing any of this paperwork, it changes hands quite a few times, right? The county has to file it, they have to scan it, they have to index it, they have to do all these things so that they are made available to the public and are in their records. And then it changes hands. So in this case, this document went to the property appraiser's office, and when they're notified of the ownership change, and it was actually someone in this unit that noticed that something on the warranty deed was strange, that the signature of the person was dated 2 months after they had passed away. So this is how this happened. This went on for months, 2 months after the death. And they found it, and they actually have a crimes against property unit in Florida because this crime is very, very prevalent. Florida, California, New York, Tennessee, Texas, these are all, it's everywhere, but these are the hotbed of activity, right? So this is the saddest thing to me looking at this story, is that this is not something that got caught at the county. This is not something that got caught as it was being filed. It took changing hands multiple times, and just one person paying a little bit of attention to see that this was awful and wrong and report it.
Now, what I want to check out here is, so was he able to take control of the title in order to be able to get some money in, or do we not know?
Yeah, nope, it was filed. So that's why it got to the appraiser's office, right? So again, no stop at the county. He was able to walk in. He did a fraudulent signature, had a fraudulent notary stamp. During the investigation afterwards, they said they'd even reached out to the notary whose stamp was on the paperwork. And the notary was like, I have no record of this. This wasn't me. They'd probably scrapped it from some other document within the county and filed it. So doing their due diligence, the family didn't know who this was. This was just a stranger off the street, probably paying attention to, our obituary still a thing, online obituaries, people that have recently passed away. I say this all the time. Matthew Cox, who you guys have had on the show before, the criminal who, had went to prison for this for, I think it was 11 or 13 years. He said that's something he would do. He would just walk into a neighborhood, keep an eye out, check out some things, look at people who'd recently passed away, look at elderly people in homes that aren't being watched. It's all just people, just scammers taking advantage of people that are in positions where they're not watching and they're not being vigilant about security.
And especially someone in this case who, as you say, a widow, 4 children, someone who's, probably obviously going to be very distracted, someone who's focused on a million other things. So here's a situation where the last thing I think on anyone's mind would be their home title, and then boom, that's exactly who gets targeted because they know that.
Sure.
And do you think, and I think you alluded to it, but do you think that is the reason that actually this woman was targeted?
Oh, absolutely. How is she? This is nothing that she's thinking about right now. She's got 4 kids. She just lost her husband. She's not, who really is? Who thinks about? That's why we do this, right? That's why we bring these stories to the public. No one is sitting here constantly thinking, let me watch this paperwork that's filed with our government office to make sure that they're doing their jobs. And technically they are. Their job is to make sure it's filled out properly. They don't look at the notary stamp to make sure that it's correct. In some states, they may verify signatures, but it's so easy to forge a signature, especially, look at AI. You can have AI copy voices. I can make myself sound like I'm singing a Beyonce song. Like AI can do anything now. Yeah. So it's super easy to get one of these documents online and then just file it. And a lot of these counties actually take the paperwork online, which is also very scary. So it's a very easy thing to do. And all you have to do is find the right target. And in this case, this Florida man found the right target, and it was very sad.
Well, and as awful as this is, it's important for us to to hear about it, to raise awareness of it. Thank you for coming on here and raising your awareness of it. Now, something like this happens, it feels like the world is falling, just completely falling all around us. And then, you don't even know, once you diagnose it, that still creates problems. And so now you're spending money to get your money back. Right. So it's completely ridiculous while you're dealing with kids and work and all the other stuff.
I want to touch on that really quick. You hit something very important.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So this man has been arrested, right? He's being charged by Florida. Luckily, Florida is actually charging these crimes now, which is wonderful. But now the homeowner still has to go through the entire restoration process, and that's why we do what we do. We're not just monitoring. We're not just alerts. We bring the homeowner through the entire restoration process. We'll spend between $1 million to fix the fraud, get everything situated, whether that's us sitting in court and going through paperwork for a year, which we've done and we will continue to do. That's what we do. Because if this homeowner walks into the county office and says this is fraud, the county's going to go, okay, cool, go hire a lawyer. And then they have to find a lawyer that actually deals with this kind of stuff. So we have a network of legal experts around the U.S. for every single municipality, because every state is different, every county is different, and we take care of it for you so that you don't have to do anything. There's no out-of-pocket spend. There's no out-of-pocket energy. We're here for you. And I think if this widow would have had home title lock, I think that it would have made a huge difference probably in her financial and emotional state at this point.
So in a situation like this, obviously, nobody wants to be in this type of situation, but that's why we have insurance. That's why I have insurance on my car. That's why I have insurance on my house, insurance on everything, that I can think of, because of the unthinkable happening in my car. So with home title lock, what would home title lock do in a, obviously not this situation, but in a similar situation?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we are urgent alerts, right? We're 24/7 monitoring. I think this is something really important to hit. So with general, I know some audience members might say, oh, I have identity theft protection. So identity theft protection monitors the person, not the property. We monitor your property. So anything that's filed in accordance with your property, you're going to get notified of. Right. So the moment you get a notification, and we have different notifications for different things, but there are some pieces of paperwork that are, a lot more, I don't want to say more urgent, but are more suspicious. So we alert you of anything. The moment you even think something is fraud, even if it's something that you filed and you totally forgot about, or your bank filed something or whatever it is, we notify you. You let us know. Our research team immediately takes action. We will call the county. We will look into the paperwork. We look at the documentation. We do all of that. If it is deemed fraud, we immediately start getting in contact with our legal network for whatever, state, county it's in. We immediately start gathering every piece of documentation needed and start going through the process of restoration. Because the quicker you get these things fixed, the less likely it is that scammer can utilize and take your equity out, go take out loans, try to sell your house. And then we go through all the legal process with anyone that needs to be, included. If that's including, talking to the police, whatever it is, like we do that with and for the homeowner to make sure that they're not alone and taking a year to do something where a scammer could take advantage of all that extra time.
Well, Natalie, and this is something where it's so important. And again, it's hometitlelock.com. Our promo code is promo code POSO. People can go there. They can sign up for free. They can get started. They can see some of this information. And I just want to, one of the things that I'm thinking about, and as horrific as this is, the situation this woman found herself in, because you and I have talked before about how these loans can be taken out if this thing progresses too far, and then all of a sudden you're in arrears. You've got this massive debt. I mean, is there a scenario where if families don't catch this quick enough, they can actually be displaced from their own homes?
Absolutely. So it's very sad. It does happen. We've seen it happen. I mean, there was a woman in, I want to say Georgia, who her home had actually been transferred to a scammer. The scammer sold it to a housing development company. Housing development company came in. Her house was under repair. They were repairing something. Bulldozed her house. She no longer has a house. There was another story where a woman fought really hard to keep her home, but the bank that was foreclosing on her home had better lawyers, ended up taking possession of the home. So she lost, and we see this unfortunately a lot. We see people getting evicted. We see people, I've seen stories. I saw a story once where someone got displaced because a new owner had come in and had all the paperwork filled out showing that they had sold the home and that they were the new owner on record. And even the new owner had filed the new paperwork on the home at the county. So it went past the scammer. The scammer sold the home. And then someone got displaced because they were no longer the owner on record. It does happen. And it's very, very sad because what do you do at that point? Your house is gone.
So, Natalie, we're almost out of time. Give people, though, the website where they can go to get started to make sure they never find themselves in this position.
Absolutely. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code POSO. The most important part of this is you're going to get a free title report. It's going to let you know what the current status of your title is to make sure that you're not already a victim. This isn't something already affecting you, especially if you have elderly parents. You can sign up your parents' home. You can sign up your family member's home. Just do it. Do it. If you don't like it, you can cancel it anytime, but at least you know. HomeTitleLock.com,
Great,
promo code
Natalie
POSO.
Dominguez.
POSO, excuse me,
Thank you so much. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code POSO. Right back.
I'm working long hours. I'm always listening to Human Events with Jack Posobiec.
They said Gen Z would stay silent, that we'd back down, that we'd forget what's worth fighting for. But this generation remembers. We remember truth. We remember freedom. And now, we rise. This is more than a conference. It's a call to action, to reclaim the future, to ignite a movement that cannot be ignored. Student Action Summit 2025, featuring the boldest voices in the fight. Charlie Kirk, Secretary Pete Hegseth, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Brett Cooper, Secretary Kristi Noem, Riley Gaines, Brandon Tatum, Jack Posobiec, Laura Ingraham, Megyn Kelly, Greg Gutfeld, Tom Homan, Congressman Byron Donalds, Russell Brand, Savannah Chrisley. Join thousands of students, future leaders, and freedom fighters. This is the battleground of ideas. This is the Student Action Summit. Register now at SAS2025.com.
Jack is a great guy. He's written a fantastic book. Everybody's talking about it. Go get it. And he's been my friend right from the beginning of this whole beautiful event. And we're going to turn it around and make our country great again. Amen.
All right, Jack Posobiec back live, Human Events Daily. By the way, there are a couple of tickets left. I want to make sure that everyone within the sound of my voice is able to get some of these things. It's Tampa, Florida. We're going to be down there, and we just ran the ad. I'll hit some of this again a little bit. For Turning Point USA, the Student Action Summit. I can't wait. This is going to be, let's see, it starts next week. It is next week, folks. So we're looking at it. I'm heading down. SAS2025.com, promo code POSO, SAS2025.com, promo code POSO. And folks, you look at the list, right? I'll hit it again. Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson, myself, Charlie Kirk, Pete Hegseth, Kristi Noem, Don Jr., Megyn Kelly, Greg Gutfeld, the great Tom Homan. Not too far, by the way, from Alligator Alcatraz. So we'll have to see how that goes. We got Laura Ingraham, Rep. Byron Donalds, Brett Cooper, who we love, Michael Knowles, Senator Josh Hawley, Benny Johnson, Alex Clark, the great Alex Clark, and so many. I don't even have time to go through the entire list here. It's going to be an incredible event. I want to make sure that you're all there. We were in Tampa a couple of years ago for this, and my brother Kay Poso liked it so much he ended up moving to Tampa, so he'll be there as well, I'm sure. And so, folks, you got to check this out, because it's meetings like this that the left doesn't want to see happening. They don't want it to exist, because it shows this movement is real, that is large, and it is not going away. So for those out there, and of course for students, you're absolutely going to love it. And we're bringing the kids. So our kids are going to be there. Who knows? Perhaps Jack and AJ will storm the stage once again with the great Tanya Tay. But folks, I wanted to take a second today, and usually when it's summertime, that's when people are outside more. There's heat and water that always get involved with summer. And there was a story that just popped out at me and it really hit me as a dad, because we've been spending a lot more time around water with our kids. We're in a swim club and teaching kids to swim and working on that with, they've got various challenges and goals that I've given them for the summer. So little AJ is working on getting out of his floaties. I think he can, but he just isn't kind of mentally there yet. And for my older son, it's he's got to finish. He's got to do some working on treading water. And so all weekend, we've been working on treading water and trying to finish this. And then all of a sudden Monday morning, this story hits out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, so the other side of Florida from Tampa. But the story of a Disney cruise where a father had his daughter, he saw right before his own eyes, his 5-year-old little girl fell off of the railing from 4 stories up, so the 4th deck of one of these Disney cruise ships. And he immediately jumped in after her, saved her, treaded water for 20 minutes in order for the crew to be able to get there and save. Because people have to understand that if you're not experienced with large ships in water, and throw my Navy officer hat on for a second here, that those ships don't stop. They don't have brakes. So yeah, even if you cut motor, there's going to be inertia. It's going to drive forward. And so it's not like the boat stops and you can just, walk out and collect someone. No, it's very, very hard. It's extremely dangerous. You're talking about open ocean. Plus, a little girl, let's say she doesn't know how to swim or her swimming skills aren't that great. She could go down and go right under. So the fact that, and plus, by the way, jumping in yourself from 4 stories high is, of course, extremely life-threatening. And I believe, and there's videos now, and it's going viral all across TikTok and Twitter and X and all the rest of it. And just God bless this man, God bless this family, God bless this little girl for being able to do that. But it's really something where I'll just throw out there again to all parents, to all people who are involved with little kids in the summertime. There's just 2 things that I always say. Number 1 is do not leave them in cars unattended in the summer, obviously animals as well. And then little kids, and whether it's a pool, whether it's a lake or a pond, or certainly the open ocean, do not let them out of your sight. Keep that positive, just positive control, positive sight on them at all times. Trust me, and I say this as a guy who loves his phone, but your phone ain't more important. Your text, your tweet, whatever it is, it ain't more important than your little boy or your little girl. And God bless this father. And hey, I guess that's just toxic white masculinity at it yet again. This is why men are necessary. This is why fathers are necessary, because in times like this fathers are the ones who stand in the gap. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to play short.